Okie dokes, everybody. Let's talk politics. Who's walked into the studio? PJ Fournier. Philippe J. Fournier is with us. He writes for Politico, big time, big leagues at Politico. Writes for L'Actualité, the mastermind behind 338canada.com. And when you write, Philippe, people pay attention.
I'm glad.
It happened this week. Right? Because your latest column for Politico about François Legault, and then I took great attention to Jean-Marc Legault. Right? Saying, I think it's going to be a little bit tighter, right? So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Is it steamroller Legault, or what else is happening?
Here's the thing, and I really like Jean-Marc. I have a great opinion of him and, of course, of his great team. But, you have to separate the pollster and the media personality. You really have to do that. And it's not because he's dishonest, but it's also for the media. It's a big deal to, make people believe that this will be competitive.
Yes.
Now, it could be competitive. There are scenarios in which the CAQ drops the ball and suddenly you have more competitive races, especially local races.
Yeah.
But, this is not the most likely scenario. The same way the Habs, when they started that series against the Las Vegas Golden Knights, well, they could win, but that's not the most likely scenario.
Okay.
Same thing here.
So, according to you and the crystal ball, most likely scenario is something historic.
It's the votes will be counted starting at 8 p.m. on October 3rd. Mm-hmm. And at 8:10, we're going to call CAQ majority. That's the most likely scenario. Yeah. Now, I have a new column in L'Actualité that comes out probably today or tomorrow. It's the editor's hand. Mm-hmm. And I try to make up scenarios where this doesn't happen. Uh-huh. And think of the 2014 PQ campaign. Everything went wrong. But in Marois went into this campaign saying we're going to get a majority, we're going to have a new referendum, and then she introduced Pierre Calpelado as a candidate, and from that point on, everything and every day was a disaster, and they lost, and they haven't recovered since. And so it's possible that a bad campaign, Denis Coderre in 2017, a bad campaign can turn the narrative around.
Yeah.
But right now, we're in July. Right now, the most likely scenario is CAQ majority.
So I want to just go over one thing that, you look at two separate questions and you say, boy, something's not right here, right? You ask Quebecers what's their priority. So many of them say healthcare, right? Healthcare.
Of course.
You ask Quebecers, right? How is François Legault and his government doing handling pandemic, administering healthcare? 73% say mishandling, right? And then, so it's the most important issue. People think the CAQ is not doing a good job of it. And then you say, who are you going to vote for? They're like, CAQ. So what's
happening there?
Yeah,
what's happening is because when this is one dimension. What you just mentioned, these numbers are interesting and they seem contradictory. But then you poll on the opposition parties and you figure out, they're worse. And so 70% of Quebecers say, okay, the CAQ is dropping the ball on healthcare. Okay, but what about Éric Duhem? What about Dominique Anglade? What about Québec solidaire? And they all poll lower. Nobody is happy.
Well, so it's so interesting you say that, right? Because Dominique Anglade was sitting where you're sitting a while back. She came into the studio, right? And on the healthcare front, you're Dominique Anglade. And Dubé's not the man. The CAQ is going to mismanage healthcare. Well, then who are you putting up to be your person for healthcare? And you think of the liberal legacy of the last 20 years,
right? And
you think of Gaétan Barrette.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, so who's, like Christian Dubé, he's likable.
He's in the polling, the numbers show that he's even more liked than most CAQ cabinet ministers. Yeah. And so, it's going to be really hard to attack Dubé because it could backfire. It's much easier to attack somebody like the education minister, Monsieur Roberge. This guy has had a rough 4 years. And so you have to put your finger on the weaknesses, not the strength of the CAQ. Otherwise, you're playing into their own hands.
Can I ask you, just for our audience especially,
all right,
since you mentioned how Dubé and Jean-François Roberge, their popularity. What about, do you know, Simon Jolin Barrette? Is he a popular minister?
The numbers that I've seen are quite old, many months old, but he's seen as a very cold person. His positive are low, but his negatives are also low. So a lot of people are apathetic. I guess he's not as flamboyant, even though he's very influential within this government. Yeah. But I'm sure we're going to get fresher numbers come August when we get into this campaign around August 25.
Philippe J. Fournier is in studio with us. He writes for Politico. Big leagues, baby, big leagues.
Thank you.
L'Actualité, which is big leagues of Quebec.
It's also big league, yeah.
And, of course, the mastermind behind 338canada.com, looking at the polls and where we're headed when it comes to the Quebec election in October. So let's get to, you mentioned, scenarios that things can get the wrench thrown into the CAQ's plans for Quebec domination. What could happen? Tell me about that.
All right. So the nightmare scenario for the CAQ looks like this. The Liberal vote is not as bad as we think. They're polling badly right now, but they didn't really do a great campaign in 2018. And so if they, pick themselves up, they keep Laval, they keep most of their Montreal seats, they maybe improve their score in the Eastern Townships. Uh-huh. The Parti québécois is not dead. They keep their Gaspésie and Lower St. Lawrence. Québec solidaire makes inroads. Rimouski, for instance, keep their Montreal seats, maybe win Maurice Richard, maybe win Verdun. Mm-hmm. Éric Duhem is a huge thorn in their side, wins Quebec City, wins Chaudière-Appalaches and Beauce, and suddenly, even though you have all these small opposition parties, but each of them takes a chunk, and then suddenly the CAQ is on the verge of losing their majority. That's a nightmare scenario. Not the most likely scenario, but the nightmare scenario, so if CAQ does exist, it includes all the parties doing better than we think they are right now.
I think it was Angus Reid, the last poll that we had from Quebec, right? Right. So they had the Conservatives at 19.
That's right.
CAQ at 35. I know you've told me that traditionally Angus Reid polls the CAQ lower.
That's right.
But in your mind, for the Conservative Party Quebec and Éric Duhem, what percentage point do they need to hit? Because they're obviously it's not like the efficiency of the vote matters, right? And where the votes happen. What percentage in the polls would you be saying? Say a new poll from Legault, the Conservative Party of Quebec is at fill in the blank where you would go, oh my goodness, something's happening here.
Yeah, the regionals are more important than the national numbers here for the PCQ, obviously. But the last numbers that we had from Legault, I think it was 40 for the CAQ in Quebec City and 26 for Éric Duhem. So it's still a major advantage for the CAQ, but Éric Duhem is not good in a city. He's really good in les couronnes, the banlieue. And so if you have 30% in the Quebec City region, we're talking multiple seats, which would translate to close to, 19-20% is la zone payante, as we say in French, where you start, instead of finishing close second everywhere, you win a few of them. Yeah. And so, of course, we're going to look at Beauce Sud, Beauce Nord, Chauveau, Lévis. I mean, Bernard-Drainville, is that a safe seat? I think it's a good seat for the CAQ. It's not a safe seat for the CAQ. His PQ past will come back and haunt him. In Lévis, the PQ was polled really low and has scored really low in elections. So check out Lévis, because Éric Duhem will go hard after Bernard Drainville, his former co-host, right, in Quebec City.
That's right.
They know each other.
Philippe J. Fournier from 338canada.com. Always great talking politics.
Always
Thanks so
a pleasure.
Much.
Take care.